I would like to introduce our next speaker, Thomas Fanning, the Chairman, President, and CEO of the Southern Company. With 4.4 million customers, more than 43,000 megawatts of generating capacity, Atlanta-based Southern Company is the leading energy company serving the Southeast. Southern Company owns electric utilities in 4 states, has a growing competitive generation company, as well as fiber optics and wireless communications businesses. Tom became president of Southern Company in August of 2010, and later that year he assumed the additional responsibilities of CEO and chairman. He has worked for Southern Company for more than 30 years, has held 15 different positions in 8 different business units during that period. Tom worked very closely with the former Florida Governor Jeb Bush to develop a state government energy policy in Florida. He also served on the governor's transition policy team and was appointed by Governor Bush to co-chair the Base Realignment and Closure Advisory Committee. His executive education is quite impressive. It includes programs at the International Institute for Management Development in Lausanne, Switzerland, and at the Harvard University School of Business. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Tom Fanning.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, it's a delight being here. Got to know Adam a little bit. He's a delightful guy, and I know that he'll do a great job running this organization. You all do great work, great service for America, and I want to thank you for that. It's really an important role that you play and really helps folks like us execute what we got to do to serve the families in the Southeast and really all over the United States. And it was so fascinating. As I go through my remarks this morning, you will hear very consistent themes between what I have to say and what Secretary Moniz says. Now, fascinating stuff. He and I, Secretary Moniz, knew each other. We were both, I guess I was vice chair of EPRI, and he was on the board there as well. And so I don't know whether we did the Vulcan mind meld then or not, but you will hear similar themes, different take from time to time. But I think it will be illuminating as he comes from a policy level to a corporate level, what we think about these issues. You know, whenever I talk about energy policy or a lot of the things that are facing us today, I always want to start with context. And, you know, when I think about what's going on around the globe today, I'm reminded of this line from Billy Joel. He says that the good old days weren't always good and the future ain't as bad as it seems. You know, when you look around the globe today, there's clearly an economic malaise, and we have our challenges here in the United States. We have unacceptably high unemployment. We have a slow-growing economy. But despite those challenges, the thing that really strikes me is that some people are starting to talk about a new normal. And I think as citizens, as leaders of the enterprise, whatever that is, whether it's business or policy or politics, I think we owe it to the American citizenry to reject that new normal notion. And what I'm here to do is to tell you today that energy provides us an opportunity to do just that. Now, a lot of people are already working on it, right? So I'm Vice Chair of the Atlanta Federal Reserve Board, and I think monetary policy, the Federal Reserve Bank is doing everything they can do. You know, from a fiscal policy standpoint, a lot more work needs to be done. As I consider fiscal policy right now, I want you to consider something that I live with every day. When I consider the families we serve in the Southeast, fully 48% of these families make less than $40,000. These families make tough, kitchen table, economic decisions every day. And I think the question I put to you, I put to myself, and anybody that I deal with is, why can't we? I think we owe it to America to address these tough issues and find a way, I think, to play offense in what is otherwise considered to be broadly a challenged environment. Well, I'm happy to say that I think the energy complex broadly, oil, natural gas, coal, electricity, we can. And I think it's exciting, something you haven't seen in your lifetime. So let me do context again. Energy policy today is based on scarcity, that notion. And in fact, despite a doubling of exports since 1990, we still remain an energy importer. And in fact, EIA yourselves still project that even by 2030, we will import 21% of our energy. What I'm here to tell you is, working on a number of fronts now, I believe that we could be a net energy exporter by 2020. I think we could become, as a nation, one of the largest producers of energy in the world by 2030 or 2035. And so reversing that trend has such great advantages for America. It gives us an unassailable advantage to restart the manufacturing economy in the United States and grow jobs and grow personal incomes and make American lives better. And I think we can do that. Some people have tried to quantify these benefits. Citigroup has a series of analysts, and they have estimated that if we get this done, that we can add 2 to 3% to our GDP. There goes your new normal. And we can create somewhere between 3 to 4 million new jobs by 2020. Further, I think that we should consider the fact that by 2030, 2035, we can create economic value in the range of $3 to $5 trillion. Now think about what we might do in reducing the national deficit. So let's think about energy as growth capital. And let's think about the notion that energy is growing every year, and particularly electricity, my industry, is growing at a rate 5 times what any other energy sector is. So what I want to do now is kind of focus on electricity policy. Now, I'm out there a lot, and you can Google it and YouTube it and all that stuff. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version here today. But it's pretty clear we need 3 things. The first is that we need, I've been saying for some years, all the arrows in the quiver. President Obama came out and said all the above, whatever you want to call it. America is blessed with vast natural resources. We need to take advantage of the full portfolio for Americans' benefit. Secondly, we need to promote energy innovation as a national priority. Thirdly, we need to restore America's financial integrity. So let's go through those 3 things. The first one was the full portfolio. So as you all probably own stocks, you may have a favorite stock. I hope it's Southern Company. But even if it is, you wouldn't just invest in Southern Company. You would have a full portfolio. And that's what we need to do with energy resources. The portfolio that I want to speak specifically about today would include natural gas, renewables, energy efficiency, maybe energy productivity is a better word, nuclear, and 21st century coal. Natural gas. That is an industry that is in the midst of a revolution based on technology innovation. And that should be a theme for us, picking up from what Secretary Moniz said. It has really changed the game by accessing otherwise unavailable resources of natural gas, plentiful, low cost. Southern Company is a great big electric utility. From an energy production standpoint, we produce about as much electricity, a little bit less, but about as much as the nation of Australia. And in the past 5 to 6 years, we have moved tremendously towards natural gas as our primary energy resource. In fact, something like 5 or 6 years ago, we only produced 16% of our energy from natural gas. This year, 45, 47%. And we can take that, based on certain market conditions, as high as 55%. We are now the 3rd largest consumer of natural gas in the United States. We used to be known as a coal company. And what's fascinating is that benefit accrues to the families we serve. Last year, we were able to give the families in the Southeast $1 billion in fuel savings as a result of this shift. So we have made our big bet. I am all in on natural gas. But what I want to tell you is that it is not a panacea. You cannot put all your eggs in that basket. Now, I'm on record. I talk about this a lot. I'm going to move through it quickly. But there are 5 reasons why you ought to be cautious about natural gas as a primary fuel source. The first of the 5 is we've got to resolve the environmental impacts on fracking. The second, we've got to build out the infrastructure in America. That includes pipelines. We make sure that we've got firm transportation available to those that need it, and we need to improve our storage capability. Thirdly, Secretary Moniz, we've got to make some historic decisions about exporting natural gas. Now, being parochial, you may be interested to know that I'm in favor of exporting natural gas. Fourth, this whole nation is going through an enormous demand curve shift when you consider manufacturing, potential for penetrating transportation, my own industry. In 2011, the United States consumed about 67 BCF per day of natural gas. There's a lot of estimates out there that call for, by 2020, somewhere between 80 to over 100 BCF consumption of natural gas per day. Now, what happens to price and volatility? The final point really is the elongation of that point, and that is counterparty credit risk. Now, I know that sounds a bit technical, but if companies like mine and the rest of industrial America make this big shift and we consume a lot more than we did, we're going to need to have healthy, viable producers of natural gas so that we can hedge volume and price long term. That will be a requirement to reduce volatility for this important resource in America. So, let me move on from that, but finish to say, natural gas is a dominant solution, but it is not a panacea. We have made the bet all in. It will continue for decades to come, and it is an unassailable advantage for America. The second one is renewables. Now, renewable prices are coming down. The growth has been tremendous, and we have participated like others. In fact, just over the last 12 months, Southern Company has either procured or own around 1,200 megawatts of renewables. We've recently procured 650 megawatts of wind that's going to be consumed in Alabama and in Georgia, and we're buying it from Oklahoma and Kansas. It's kind of interesting. We own, in a joint venture with Ted Turner, solar resources in New Mexico, in Nevada, and California. We have the largest voluntary solar program in the state of Georgia. And we have built, own, and operate one of the world's largest biomass facilities in Texas. So we're doing a lot. And if it benefits our customers, we will continue to do more. Here's one thing I want you to think about renewables. There are 3 limitations that we've got to consider in thinking about its role in the energy complex going forward. Number 1 is the fact that where the great resources, particularly for solar and wind are, there are few people. And so we need to build big, robust, long-haul transmission systems. Number 2, it is an intermittent resource. So when the wind doesn't blow, when the sun doesn't shine, we've got to have a backup fuel source. That fuel source is most likely to be natural gas. You're doubling down your bet on natural gas. And the third is, this is an industry that gets a lot of federal tax subsidies, 100 times those accorded the gas and coal industry, and about 50 times that are accorded nuclear. I don't think that policy is sustainable in the long run. But I can assure you, when I think about renewables, it is an important resource. It will remain important for the Southeast, where we have 9.5-cent power on the average. It will probably be limited in its penetration until maybe the end of this decade, 2018, 2020. But it's something that we will consider in thinking about more innovative solutions, and I'll talk about that in a minute, it could be a game changer. The third area is energy efficiency. I like to call that more energy productivity. And it has enormous potential. And in fact, we're already doing a lot there. Southern Company has avoided something like 4,000 megawatts of capacity since 1990. That represents about 11% of the generation that we have to build to meet the needs of the customers we serve. And from an energy standpoint, since 2010, we have avoided 1.6 billion kilowatt hours. So what does that mean? That's like the annual consumption of energy of the city of Birmingham and Savannah taken together for a year. So that's a lot. We are doing a lot. But one of the things that I just want to talk about there, when I think about energy efficiency and I consider what do we really mean about consumption for our customers, I think this line makes a lot of sense. We want to use less energy when we can, but we want to use more where we should. Return again to the families we serve, the 48% that make less than $40,000 a year. I want these families to live in a better place, to eat better, to get better medical care, to educate their kids better. As the human existence improves, they will necessarily use more energy, and that is good for everyone. The fourth area I want to talk about is nuclear. Now, nuclear currently represents about 20% of the nation's energy supply. We are leading the renaissance of nuclear in America by building the first new nuclear units in a generation of Americans. Now, in order to do that, you really need to have three attributes. You need to have scale. We're about a $40 billion market cap company. The project we're building in Georgia, by itself, $14 billion and takes 10 years to construct. So we own about 45.7%. But when you undertake a project of that magnitude, you better have scale. Otherwise, you're betting your company. The second attribute is you better have the highest level of financial integrity. If you start something that's going to take 10 years to build, something like a nuclear plant like that, you cannot take a day off. And we know that the global and American domestic financial markets are variable. You've got to have the staying power through good markets and bad to build those important projects. And then finally, the third attribute is this is no business for beginners. You better have an excellent level of credibility in operating and maintaining the nuclear fleet. I think we've got that. Nuclear is emissionless. It must also be a dominant solution for America. The fifth and final segment is 21st century coal. Now, the United States contains about 27% of the world's coal reserves. But for a lot of reasons, coal has gone out. We're trying to find a way to keep coal viable in our generation mix. I think that's important. Southern Company is the only company in America today that has a robust proprietary research and development group. And we've been committed to finding solutions, not just doing rhetoric, and thinking about the problems of the future. We've done a lot of work in the past on environmental control equipment, new generation technologies. But one of the things we've done here is we've developed, along with a partner of ours, Kellogg Brown Root, a generation technology that uses coal that we're building in Mississippi, 582 megawatts. And what we're going to do is take native Mississippi lignite that otherwise goes unused. We're going to gasify it in our proprietary technology. As we create a synthesis gas, we will strip out 65 to 70% of the CO2. We'll take that CO2 that some people consider a waste. We will use it in something called EOR, Enhanced Oil Recovery. With the remaining synthesis gas, we produce electricity. So imagine this. Using a resource that otherwise goes unused, we produce more domestic oil, more domestic electricity, tax base, jobs, Mississippi lives better for decades to come. The energy coming out of that process will be about $1.25 per million BTU. Competes favorably with nuclear at about $1 per million BTU. This may be a way forward for coal in America, and we're proud to really champion that effort. So when I think about this full portfolio, natural gas and renewables and energy efficiency, those are great, and people talk about those a lot. But we can't forget the workhorses of nuclear and coal with new technology innovations that really have served us so well for so long. And when I think about that portfolio, Southern Company is the only company in America today that invests in every one of those segments. We've committed $20 billion and in the process have created 250,000 jobs. This is a way forward for America, and we need to continue in this vein. The second big segment I talked about was energy innovation. Now look, we're already doing a lot. The first new nuclear units in a generation of America, and the 21st Century Coal Project in Mississippi. We've deployed a nearly 4.5 million smart meters throughout the Southeast, and they're working great. But I want to touch on a new innovation that we're working on right now, and that is distributed generation. So remember I talked about one of the limitations of renewables, for at least solar in this case, was large central station, high-intensity solar projects require big transmission. Well, here's a solution where maybe you don't. Maybe what we could do is put a thin film photovoltaic cell on your rooftop, no transmission required at all, and integrate that into our operation. There's a big issue, though, and it's this. Right now, remember, we sell power at about 9.5 cents. The price point is way far away. So I don't think in the Southeast you're going to see much penetration of distributed generation until probably, again, the end of the decade. But if it gets here, if production cost curves improve, as Secretary Moniz says, if the translation efficiency of sunlight to electricity continues to improve, well, maybe this thing makes sense, and maybe it's a potential game changer. Here's one of the big issues we've got to consider, though. The early adopters of distributed generation are likely to be affluent customers. And what we've got to do is make sure that we charge those customers fairly for their connection to the grid and their requirement to have backup generation resources when the sun doesn't shine. Failing to do that will create a subsidy, less affluent people subsidizing early adopter affluent people. We've got to get the rate structure right. And if we do that and we build a business model that makes sense for our customers, this could be a very exciting innovation development. When you think about the value that's been created in America from IT with IBM and Google and Microsoft and Facebook and everything else, why can't we create that value in the energy space? I'm proud to be a leader of that in our industry. And I think we can do more from a federal standpoint to advance those causes. The third and final segment really goes to restoring America's financial integrity. Well, why in the world do I care about that? Well, my company spends about $5.5 billion a year in CapEx. My industry spends about $90 billion a year in CapEx. When you think oil, natural gas, coal, these are some of the biggest capital-intensive industries in the world. And we need to access the capital markets that are going to be regular, predictable, and sustainable in their nature. And so, therefore, we've got to get this restoration of America's financial integrity right. Otherwise, we can't advance these causes for which there is so much value. There's three things that will support restoring America's financial integrity. One just deals with energy policy. Who should set that? My portfolio responsibility to my customers is to provide clean, safe, reliable, and affordable energy. Only Congress, in my opinion, has the right lens to be able to balance those interests. So what we need to do is have Congress step forward and weigh in on implementing sensible national energy policy. The second is to fix America's balance sheet. We know we've got a debt crisis. In my opinion, it's one of the biggest and yet most avoidable challenges this nation has ever faced. Now, we can do this. This is not a Democrat issue. It's not a Republican issue. This is essentially an American issue. And whether you want to cut costs, I think we should. Whether you want to raise taxes, I'm not in favor of that. I think that inhibits growth. But I do think we need to reshape taxes. What we've got to do is be for growth. And I'm returning to the idea that energy is one of the greatest examples of growth capital today. If we fail to deal with this, we will inescapably leave our children and our grandchildren with higher interest rates and higher taxes and slower economic growth. You're back to that new normal that I reject. The final issue on restoring America's financial integrity is a little technical, but it really just deals with tax policy. I talk a lot about that in the media. We've been on record, Southern Company has been. We need to simplify the tax code. It's incredibly complex. And what we would be willing to do is to forego all of our forward-looking tax preference items. Now, let us keep what we got. We made economic decisions on those. And let us keep something called normalization in place. It's a way to flow back tax benefits to our customers. But going forward, I would do without all tax benefits in exchange for a 25% fixed rate over time. The other thing that would do for us is allow us to get government out of picking winners and losers in the markets via tax preference items. We need to move in that direction. So let me wrap up then. When I think about the exciting opportunities in front of us, facing the challenges that the globe and our nation faces through a North American energy security plan, I believe, and Dr. Moniz almost said this, energy security promotes national security and provides for economic security. The benefits are too great not to have the national will to pursue. And from an electricity policy standpoint, all the arrows in the quiver, the full portfolio, energy innovation is a national priority, and restoring America's financial integrity. We all as citizens can do that. And as leader of one of America's largest electric utilities, we are proud to play a leadership role. This will benefit the families we serve and the communities all across the United States. It is an honor to be here with you and to pitch that idea. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tom. Why don't you just stay right there? I think it's easier for everybody to see you. A number of questions. This kind of reminds me a little bit about the Secretary. There's a couple on the nuclear loan guarantee with the DOE, and then the rest of them are, why do you support LNG exports?
Fantastic.
We can go through this. Let's try the first one. Could you give us an update on the agreement with DOE on the Vogtle nuclear loan guarantee?
Sure. So let me first give you a little bit of math on Vogtle. It's pretty interesting. When we first had Vogtle approved by the Georgia Public Service Commission, we have great support for nuclear in Georgia. The governor, the legislature, the Public Service Commission provides 5,000 jobs, 25,000 indirect, tremendous economic benefits. Everybody's behind it. When we first had that project approved, we thought we would have a 12% price increase associated with the nuclear plant. As it turns out now, we think the net price increase is going to be something like 6 to 8%. We've had over $2 billion of benefits accrue. Even though we've slid the schedule a year and costs have gone up a little, the benefits have way overwhelmed the added cost. So, when I think about the benefits, one of the benefits that we've considered has been these loan guarantees. And at one time, we were moving pretty quickly to go ahead and get closure on that. But I think the Department of Energy changed their stance on the requirements to finally close these. And we've had to very carefully weigh whether the new perspective on terms and conditions for the loan guarantees will ultimately inure to the benefit of our customers. We are flowing the benefit of those loan guarantees straight through to customers. And unlike a lot of the loan guarantee program, the guarantor behind the loan guarantee is Georgia Power Company, which on its own would have a market cap of about $20 billion, single A rated, one of the strongest companies in America. So what we have to do is weigh the new terms and conditions with the ultimate perceived economic benefit. And let me just tell you, last year, Southern Company in the aggregate sold $4.2 billion of debt with an 18-year average life at 2.8%. So this is a great economic climate to build a nuclear plant. We've got to weigh carefully whether the loan guarantees will give us the benefits we thought it did, considering the new terms and conditions. Lately, we've had constructive progress. We're very hopeful, but we'll see.
Thank you. So this goes to the LNG or natural gas exports idea with half of your generating capacity in natural gas. Why is it from a business perspective that you're not as concerned about exports as some of the chemical companies, for example?
Right, yeah. We've had a lot of conversations with that. I know Andrew Livers of Dow and I've had a chat at the Business Roundtable. It's pretty interesting. Here's my perspective. What's good for America generally is good for my company. I'm good for economic growth. And my sense is this idea of North American energy security has a multiplier effect to the economy that will serve our families in the Southeast, the broader national economy, so well. So if it helps the economy, then I'm for it. The other point is I think natural gas prices will find their way whether we export or not. You may have some temporary dislocations and some temporary volatility, but if we give the producers an incentive to produce, then they will produce and we will have, I think, plentiful supply at a price that's going to provide equilibrium to the market in a sensible way. Whether you export or not, I think prices will go to that level. And so for the good of America, for the good of our economy, pursuing North American energy security and using the blessing of these so-called tight gases to grow the economy is something we should do.
Secretary Moniz talked about the need to move forward on climate, and this question asks for your opinion on things like carbon taxes, fees, regulatory limits on CO2, and that kind of thing. How does Southern Company fit into that?
Sure. I think carbon taxes are bad for the economy. When I talk about the solutions that we've got to be for as a nation, where you either cut costs or you redo taxes, but you should be for growth. See, energy is growth capital. When I think again about the 48% of the families we serve, they have relatively inflexible demands for energy. And as their standard of living rises, their consumption of energy rises. Taxing growth capital is not a sensible approach in America. There's better ways to constrain or to incent less carbon-intensive technologies and fuels brought to bear in the future than a carbon tax. Look at nuclear. Look at the technology we're building in Mississippi. That technology using coal has less of a carbon footprint than natural gas today. Pretty interesting stuff. Energy efficiency, dominant solution. Renewables, good stuff. So there's better ways to do it. We don't need to create a new tax.
I think it's kind of interesting, the project that you have that will sequester CO2 could be one of the first commercial ventures.
Right. So in fact, Southern Company on behalf of DOE, we've had a long-standing relationship with the Department of Energy. We run the nation's Carbon Capture Research Center in Wilsonville, Alabama. We're also the only company doing wide-scale research on CCS today. So the project in Mississippi is CCS, but it's not just storage, it's enhanced oil recovery. It actually has value. It's indexed to the price of oil. That's on a pre-combustion basis, so we're stripping out the CO2 before we combust the fuel. At Plant Miller near Mobile, Alabama, we're doing some R&D on capturing carbon post-combustion. So the hot gas effluents that come out of the plant, we're capturing carbon there. And we're doing it in a variety of other places. I think there may be real potential value for the United States in linking together carbon as an effluent and enhanced oil recovery. That makes a lot of sense in my area of the United States. It has real value. It can help drive the economy, not just be a waste stream.
We've had a couple of questions actually on the demand side management. A little bit different maybe than efficiency, but could you go into that a little bit for us?
Well, sure. So when I gave you the statistics of what we've done, in the last 20 years we've avoided 4,000 megawatts of capacity, roughly 11% of our capacity needs. And when we've avoided the energy, so 1.6 billion kilowatt hours since 2010, each of those are different ways to reference this kind of energy efficiency idea. Demand avoidance enables you not to build as much. And in fact, when we do generation planning, we use energy efficiency, and I think I'd rather start using energy productivity, but whatever. We use that as an actual generation resource. In this case, it's a negative resource in our expansion plans. And in fact, our plan is between 2010 and 2020 to commit another $1 billion to programs associated with energy efficiency to reduce capacity needs and reduce energy consumption.
Are the state regulatory agencies cooperating with you on demand side management issues?
Sure. So what you get out of the South, the Southeast particularly, are people that really understand the confluence of interest between business and the economy and regulation. And I am often quoted in the press as saying we have constructive regulation. I think what that means is that the litmus test for almost every program we have or any generation we employ or any technology we develop is ultimately, does it inure to the benefit of our customers from a clean, safe, reliable, affordable standpoint? So when I think about energy efficiency programs, they've got to make sense and compete against our normal fleet of energy production. As well, we don't have an RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard, in any of our states. I guess Florida has some programs. But what the regulators do is allow renewables to compete against the other forms of generation on a cost-effective basis. So what we want is the best marriage of clean, safe, reliable, affordable for the benefit of our customers. That's what you get from our regulators. And it's worked quite well. Prices below the national average, reliability statistics as high as they've been. I think we were #1 in the American Customer Satisfaction Index this year. So it's working pretty well.
This next question is a bit of a follow-up to that, but maybe from a different angle. How does innovation, which you talked about a lot in your remarks, stack up against regulated states and cost controls within the regulatory?
Well, that's actually a great question, because when I said we're the only company in our industry doing proprietary, robust research and development, everybody else got out of it because they wanted to cut costs. That's what happened. And R&D is always on the chopping block, right, for those types of things. What we've been able to demonstrate at Southern Company for so many years, for decades, in fact, to commemorate, I forget now, we're nearing 40 years of big research and development in our company. We just put out a book, Innovative Solutions is the name of it. Really a hot seller, by the way. But what we've been able to demonstrate over the years, and what we do is flow all these benefits essentially back to our customers in the form of, so we developed our own scrubber technology, our own SCR technology, and we've been able to deploy, I think by the end of this year, $13 billion of environmental equipment on budget, on schedule, with quality, environmental removal capabilities, better than anything else in the market. And we've developed some stuff. The largest fiberglass vessels in the world are part of our scrubber technology. Pretty interesting stuff. When we think about our ability to deploy gas generation that we did in the 90s, that's allowed us to have this enormous swing capability to switch off of coal onto gas. We've done that with the idea that we could deploy it over and over again, kind of cookie cutter, scale helps, to where we've been able to deploy natural gas technology 10 to 20% cheaper than anywhere else in the United States, on the average anywhere else in the United States. So what we've been able to demonstrate with research and development are real solutions that inure to the benefit of our customers from price and reliability. Now, what's fascinating is how we're shifting our research and development efforts to the future. See, in order to look around the corners of the future, you've got to have a little bit of vision and courage. And that's why we're kind of looking at distributed generation as a resource. Innovative ways to use, and I'm a particular fan of thin film photovoltaic. I think we can use those materials in our daily operations to the advantage of our customers. Thinking about new ways to deploy smart meters. When the tornadoes came through Tuscaloosa, Alabama a couple of years ago, we could light up the entire system and find out who exactly was out, and therefore we could deploy our restoration efforts in a much more efficient way, and we got the lights back on with less cost and a much faster time frame.
So do you know when power's off whether gasoline stations have power or not? I'd like to talk to you.
We know everything.
That would be actually a really good one, Hurricane Sandy. Last question, a very specific one, but it kind of follows up on the innovation and alternative energy theme. Biomass plant in Texas, is that up and running? Where's that?
Okay, it runs great. There's a problem. The energy cost coming out of the biomass plant doesn't compete well against the wind energy there. Now, what we expect is that its capacity factor will rise pretty dramatically as you get into the peak season. And in fact, some people are worried about shortages in Texas. So it's just been during the shoulder months, the off-peak months, the plant hasn't run, but the plant runs great. The biomass runs great. Everything's super. It's the largest bubbling bed technology using biomass in the world. And it's the largest in North America, period, 100 megawatts. Cool stuff. And it looks like it's straight out of Star Wars. You got to go see it somewhere. Straight stainless steel, really a beautiful looking plant. Only a utility guy would say that, right?
Tom, thank you very much. I'm surprised that we didn't get too many people following up on your prescription for how to make things better here in Washington, but maybe we could talk a little bit about that during the break. I've got just a quick announcement to make after, but please join me in thanking Tom Fanning.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.